Hey, do you teach yoga? Have you ever trained to lead yoga classes, to be a yoga therapist? Have you ever owned a yoga studio? Maybe even just wondered what it was like for the women and men up there in front of the room on their mats, leading you through endless Surya Namaskars, down dogs, and pranayamas galore? Well, these are their stories, and mine. I'm Rebecca Sebastian, a 20-year yoga teacher, 10-year yoga therapist, yoga studio owner, and co-founder of a yoga-focused nonprofit. I've done a lot in the yoga world over the last 20 years, pretty much everything except had a water cooler. You know, a place to share stories, talk about struggles, successes, and find other people who do the same thing that I do. Welcome to Working in Yoga, a podcast and substitute water cooler for yoga folks to connect and build community, to share our unique profession, our challenges, and our journeys with the world.
Hey friends, welcome to Working in Yoga. This week, I want to talk about something I've been noticing in our industry, something I think we sort of have accidentally built, and something that now feels like it's evolving. Now, I don't really have solutions to present today as I talk about this. I just want to name the thing. So for a long time in yoga, students essentially had two options. You could take a group class, or you could enter a teacher training program, which is essentially a container that deepens your practice and maybe gives you the skills to teach. And I don't know why it took me so long to see this. I'm chuckling because I really don't know why it took me so long to see this. But we built the exact same structure for yoga professionals. We created public online spaces that function like group classes. You know, you follow along, you respond to prompts, you absorb opinions, maybe adjust your thinking in real time. And then if you want something deeper, you're told to pay, frankly, a ridiculous amount of money for business coaching. A container that promises clarity and confidence and success, often without much evidence that the person teaching has actually made a living doing the work you're trying to do. This is one of my biggest frustrations with the business coaching side of yoga. It's that very few people offering business coaching have actually built careers as yoga teachers or yoga therapists. Now, I do want to note there's an exception here. Yoga studio owners have some great business coaches in that space who are also studio owners. But for the rest of us, not so much. Like maybe we're taking coaching from people who've built their careers as yoga teacher trainers, sure. But that's kind of the equivalent of taking business advice from someone who's only ever made money teaching people how to run a business without actually ever running one themselves. This is especially glaring in yoga therapy. So few people have made their living primarily as yoga therapists, yet there are entire business trainings built on theory and not lived practice. I'm not bringing this up to talk smack, I promise. I'm bringing it up because it points to a real gap. For students, we understand that there should be steps, right? Not everyone needs or wants a $3,000 teacher training just to deepen their practice. We have immersions, we have intensives. If we're lucky, we have studentship programs. Those are spaces to learn more without overcommitting. But what are the equivalent spaces for yoga professionals? Because I see so much burnout right now, and I don't think it's only about money. I think it's a huge part, the lack of clarity and where we sit in the industry and what we're actually building. You know that exercise that someone tells you to do when you're feeling overwhelmed? And it's like to zoom out, you know, like you imagine yourself and eventually you're a speck on the planet Earth. And then that Earth is a speck within the solar system, and that solar system a speck within the galaxy, and the galaxy a speck within the incomprehensibly large universe. That's kind of what working in yoga can feel like now. We feel small, untethered. We feel like we have very little influence over our own trajectory. And it didn't always feel like this. I think we used to have orientation, even if we've never had an actual professional ladder to climb. I think you already kind of know where I'm going with this. Like you start out as a yoga teacher, and maybe you got good enough as a yoga teacher that you taught workshops, and maybe you moved into teacher training or studio ownership or both of those things together. Maybe some of us moved into yoga therapy, which felt like the boss level of one-on-one work. It didn't guarantee money, but it gave you something to get better at. And we don't really have that orientation anymore. I talked a lot on this podcast last year, especially about portfolio careers, and that's what I built without realizing it. But honestly, I don't love that term for us anymore. I've started thinking of my own career as bespoke, designed by me for me, because I never have met two yoga professionals with the same path. These aren't typical standardized portfolios. They're custom built lives, and that uniqueness matters. Okay, but bespokeness does have its drawbacks. First, we're deeply moralized on this idea of doing what you love. So we're told to find the right niche, the perfectly aligned offering, the thing that lights us up like a Renaissance muse would. And if we haven't found that thing yet, we're told we need more alignment or more coaching or there's something wrong with us. And secondly, we're expected to do that work kind of on our own. Oftentimes we look at groups, public groups especially, as like, what if she steals my niche? Or what if I don't actually know what I want? Or what if I'm truly behind? So we kind of wander and we wait for inspiration, and we assume clarity is supposed to arrive to us fully formed. And all of this is happening inside an industry that expanded rapidly over the last 15 years without building infrastructure to support the people doing the work during that rapid expansion. Much of the existing infrastructure today is designed to benefit a small number of people at the expense of the field as a whole, and that's just truth. And here's the thing we don't talk about enough. The spaces we do have for professional conversations, well, they come with some limitations. Social media, for example, is incredible for organizing. I really love it. Like, look at the work that yoga therapists did in this last year, advocating with the International Association of Yoga Therapists. Social media is also great for connection, and I genuinely love high-level industry conversations online. I truly, truly mean that. Those conversations are part of why I do this work. But public online spaces are not good at helping us individually with professional clarity and discernment. They're not designed for reflection. They're also not designed for synthesis or for slow thinking. And I think this tension reflects a larger question of our time. How do we understand systems on a macro level while also taking responsibility for the parts of our own work that are ours to shape? What is personal and what is systemic? And how do we work on both without collapsing them into each other? A lot of yoga professionals feel stuck or behind or, and this is my favorite, bad at business. And I want to say this clearly. You're not bad at a business that barely exists. Many people who appear to be succeeding are doing so through a combination of intention, timing, access, and luck. And the rest of us are left thinking something's wrong with us. What becomes obvious, if we're honest, is that one of the things we're missing is a space to think among colleagues, a space to ask questions like, what does this actually mean for my work? And a space to translate industry insight into personal strategy. And yes, this process is really slow sometimes. It involves discomfort. You often start moving before you're fully certain, and you live your way into clarity. And this is why I think what we actually need is reflection, not just information. We have so much information, y'all, but how do we reflect that into our own businesses? How do we actually have translation and not just inspiration? And how do we have strategy and not just hustle? Quick fixes, containers, and 3-month business courses that are all pre-recorded videos are not the answer. Look, Google can teach you how to build an email list. That's not the work I'm talking about here. The more I look at my public spaces, the ones I've built, the podcast, the Facebook group, the more I realize that trying to hold public discourse and private reflection in the same room isn't really fair to anyone. I think it creates confusion and it asks too much of the wrong spaces. Specifically, we're asking too much of social media, I think. I'm also realizing that I personally can't hold every kind of conversation in public anymore. And honestly, I don't think it's healthy for us to try. We've started really relying on public opinion to guide personal, professional decisions. And public conversation can inform our path, but it can't decide it for us. So I'll leave you with a couple questions here. First is this, and think about these the next time you're on your mat or you're taking a walk. The first is this: where do you do your best thinking about your work? And next is, what kind of room does your career need right now in order for you to feel like you can grow? Okay, so over the next few months, I'm going to be experimenting with creating quieter spaces where yoga professionals can work together thoughtfully and collectively on what comes next. If you want to know more, you can find the link in the show notes to the back room. That's what it's called. It's a working space. It's like a digital speakeasy for those of us who feel solid in our teaching and are trying to understand what's next without losing ourselves in the noise. Think of it like, you go into that laundromat and there's that weird sort of like handle that you pull and you walk into this like hidden door. But instead of alcohol and gambling tables, it's hot tea and other people who work in yoga who are just as passionate as you are. So I'm going to leave you with this. Some conversations help us understand the industry, and others help us understand our place within it. And they don't belong in the same room. Okay, so thank you for listening, my friends. I've got a double episode on yoga and neurodivergence happening next week and the week after. So let's go get to work. It's a new year, and we've got nothing but opportunity ahead of us. I'll catch you around the water cooler next time.